Well, I always want to start with the music because music makes the world go around. Quite frankly, my name is Precious Ilay, and I'm a speaker, a certified executive coach,
Wow.
and a storyteller. Language barrier could be a language barrier or could be a language asset.
Wow.
So it depends on how it's framed. That's one. So I've often had people say to me, "Oh, I'm really struggling with public speaking, and I'm not the best confident person because I have to think in my language first, process it, then translate the message, right?"
Precious, you are really precious for sure.
Yes.
And as we started, I said I wanted to move to Nigeria. I want to be Nigerian because Nigerians are smart, everything. Now, I'm wondering, these abilities to communicate calmly and, being able to express your ideas isn't affected by the place where you are born. By nature, I promise you, Nigerians, I'm sorry for my Nigerians friends. These people are loud. Not loud. Loud. Nigerians are loud. Not like you talk.
That's hilarious. So let me just confirm that I understand what you're asking. How does where we're from and culture
Yes.
shape how we communicate?
Yes.
What's going on, Afro Diaspora Nation? Now, you guys might notice my voice starts very low today, which is very important because of the guest of tonight, man. So, first of all, you know what I'm saying? We're just going to introduce my guy on the right side of me here, Major Magisha. What's up, man?
Peace and love.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's your regular intro, right?
I'm planning to change to Nigerian, eh? Did I tell you that?
That's why my voice got really low today, because I want to ask him. We want to
Yeah.
discuss why exactly.
No, they said
Want to bring
Africa shouldn't have borders, right?
Right.
So we should choose anywhere we want to go. So I'll be heading west, Nigeria.
Are we going to Uganda? That's for sure.
I thought you already been in Uganda.
You know what I'm saying? We discussed about that.
Yeah.
Uganda is still starting strong with me right there. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, man. We are absolutely glad to have you back. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, click the button, man. Subscribe and send to a friend to subscribe. And if you want to be our guest for next upcoming shows, hit up OC Music on Instagram and shoot up a DM and book your spot. We discuss a lot about leaders in this show, about how to become a leader. A lot of people are leaders, but how do we dive in and be able to be a speaker and impact the people, impact everyone with your words, and how you change people's lives? So that is the reason why we have today's guest.
Beautiful.
Because we will discuss how do people become leaders. Because a lot of people struggle with speaking. I know I used to be like that. And maybe I'm still like that.
Nervousness, when you stand in front of people.
Couple shows here, I be sweating out there, So there's definitely better ways you can change your ways in speaking, in calming yourself, which why we are very, very glad to have the guest of tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, she is Precious. Her name is Precious. Precious, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Wonderful to have you here. We are very, very excited to know what's coming to the show, what we're going to learn about just being a leader and speaking and the styles of approaching how to make a speech and public speeches and so on. So, but on tradition of this show, we always like to give a guest an opportunity to introduce themselves, where they're from, and how about they've come to become the path they've taken. So that's one of the things we always try to do. So the floor is yours. You can introduce yourself to the people, the lovely people here at Afro Diaspora Nation that we got.
That's good. Well, I always want to start with the music because music makes the world go around. Quite frankly, my name is Precious Ilay, and I'm a speaker, a certified executive coach,
Wow.
and a storyteller.
Beautiful. Well, I didn't need to start a strong conversation to begin with. That was already one of the show that we needed. If we needed energy, that's already one of it right there.
Wow,
Major.
man.
Now you wanna be
I
Nigerian
think
again? You said
this is the reason why I want to be
that's what
Nigerian.
I'm saying.
Because you don't get that easily in Africa, you know. Only in Nigeria.
The energy is Niger.
The energy, the determination, you know, that mind of, you know, just starting something. It comes from there, man.
Come on down.
Come on.
I love that. I love
Shout
that.
out.
Well, shout out to all Nigerians.
Shout out to
out there.
Nigerians in the building. But we're absolutely great to have you here. So how long have you taken that path of just trying to change everyone's life with just a way of helping them in public speaking, public engagement and all that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to go back to my origin story.
Oh.
For me, when I first started speaking, I was about 10 years old. My mom, often would say, is my first client. My mom used to be afraid of speaking.
Okay.
She was terrified. She didn't really like it. And she would always ask me, what is it that makes you so confident
Yeah.
in speaking? You're not afraid of those audiences of 200, 500, 1,000 plus people. And I would often say to her, as somebody who is a leader of faith, I would often say, you know, my confidence comes from God. That's my first driver and source.
Wow.
And then secondly, I remember saying some version of something like this. So I would say, you know, Mom, if God has given me a purpose, why should I be afraid to express that purpose to the world? And it's the same for anybody else out there. If you can step beyond yourself and think about the message that you have inside of you that is worth spreading with the world, does it really matter if you're afraid?
Wow. Are you getting touched, Major? I'm getting goosebumps. We just started the show, Precious. But that's absolutely true.
That's being so confident, eh? Because some people still will have the message, clear message, but the art of bringing it out, that takes experience. You know, it takes a lot of years of being afraid when you see people's eyes. But I want to know the magic secret behind that, like removing that frustration when you see people's eyes.
Yeah, it's a great question. People often ask me about secrets. I like to joke that there are no secrets.
Okay.
There are structures.
Wow.
When you recognize that with everything, it's sort of like a math equation, perhaps, or a process. There's always like step by step, like how you get through things. The first thing I often say to people, first of all, before you think about whether you speak to your team in a meeting, for example, some people perhaps are more comfortable one-on-one with their manager, and for some other people, they have no choice but to get out there and sell their business, right? Regardless of which option you're presenting, where you're speaking, the first question I often ask people is, what's your why? Why are you doing it? What's the motive behind it? What's driving you? And Simon Sinek, who wrote the book, Start With Why, he has a TED Talk about this as well, would often say that people don't buy what you do and how you do it. They buy why you do it.
Right.
And so the first person you have to remember that's your first audience is not your audience, it's you. You speak to yourself first before anybody else.
Right.
And so if you don't believe in your why as your first audience,
Wow.
it's very hard to convince anybody else to believe in your message.
My question following that, I guess, will be, do you believe that could be a strategy when somebody is, for example, feeling anxiety of being just in public speaking? Do you think once they speak to themselves saying, I have to do this because I want to let them know why I'm doing this. You think that is a kind of method somebody could take if they're dealing with a lot of anxiety problems? You think that's a method that could calm them through that process?
Absolutely. I'll share a story. I was going to deliver a presentation, and I thought it was going to be a very small workshop. I'd convinced myself that it was going to be a very short workshop, maybe max 40, 50 people.
Right.
Not too bad, right? For this big conference in Western Canada. A few minutes before I walked out of the house to deliver this presentation, mind you, I'd been preparing for weeks, even though I'm a speaker. I like to make sure I'm on top of my game.
Right.
I was just about to reach for the doorknob, and I just heard a voice inside say, "Nobody wants to listen to you. Everybody already knows what you're going to talk about. It's not a big deal. Like, this is not even news." And guess what? As a thought leader, that made me shrink inside.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
And I almost wanted to call the organizers to cancel my session because I was freaking out that what I was going to share wasn't that novel, wasn't that unique. And I paused, felt my feet on the floor, called on that courage inside, just took a quick minute to pray. I was like, God, I feel so scared right now. But then I reminded myself about my why. Why am I doing this? I'm not doing it to sound smart or to be an expert. I'm doing it because I want to learn from the people in the audience about this topic. I want to make it a conversation. So guess what? I left, drove almost an hour and a half to this location. The keynote finished. My session was up next. I walked to the front of the podium, and as I was walking up the podium, I was thinking maybe there might be 40 to 50 people. Guess how many people were in the audience?
Over 100.
Over 200.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
So
Wow.
over 200 people picked my workshop at that conference. That's the power of believing in your why and starting with why.
Language barriers, can they also make somebody not to be able to communicate very well?
Yes. That could be a potential concern.
Yeah, because I do rock things in Swahili. When you take me to English, I think twice before I say things because maybe I might be taken out of context.
Right.
So can that?
You're curious about how someone might navigate it?
Yes.
Yeah, with everything, I think we can look at it in different ways. Language barrier could be a language barrier or could be a language asset.
Wow.
So it depends on how it's framed. That's one. So I've often had people say to me, "Oh, I'm really struggling with public speaking, and
Right.
I'm not the best confident person because I have to think in my language first, process it, then translate the message, right? If you ask me to speak French, of course, it would be a very different experience, right? But what I would often say, regardless of what your language level or comfort level is the first thing is one, thinking about your why, but two, thinking about your language skill as an asset. So I'll give an example. I often find that people put restrictions on how they can show up, how they can do a presentation. But those restrictions are often based on what they think the expectations are of them as a presenter or speaker. But who says that you can't speak French in the middle of an English presentation and turn that into part of your story?
Wow.
For example, I started this podcast by singing. I didn't have to ask for permission to sing.
Wow.
I took up space to sing. And that's a form of a language.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the real question is, how much permission are you waiting for others to offer you, even if you have a language barrier? Or how much permission are you giving yourself to express yourself, regardless of your language barrier?
Wow. Very, very deep. I know, a lot of people obviously have they've had this problem where you're in the middle of a speech, or you're told to do a certain speech in a certain place. You are home preparing everything. You write down the points of what you want to talk about. Everything comes down to every now staring at you at the stage. You are being lost in the moment, and when you slip up on that one point, the rest of the things just get jumbled up, and you can't catch up. I've had so many times I've gone through that, and the rest of the things you just have to improvise because things are messed up. So my question to you was, in those points, is there any way you can keep yourself calm in order to follow every structure of the points that you're willing to try to say without actually having distractions, and keeping that same mindset of let me get every point out without having distractions? Because some people do have their points, but they do give examples in between the points. So I'm not sure if that interrupts whatever they have to say, or how do you prepare in that mindset to have that kind of following rule that you have to put for yourself.
So let me just double check the question, because it sounds like it's multiple questions.
There's multiple questions for sure. That's one of the examples I'm talking about. I wanted to ask something, but everything popped up in there. But
so is the question when you're in the middle of a talk and you forget what you're about to say, or is the question...
The question is, I think, more like, how do you follow every point of what you want to say without being distracted in other things?
I see. Okay. So that's a good question. So how do you go through every point of what you want to say without being distracted?
Yes.
Start with the point.
Start with the first point you have. That's for sure.
I'll give an example. When I coach people, I often find, the first little while is just, without us trying to over prepare for this presentation, just speak to me about what you're going to present, right? Don't look at slides, just talk to me like a conversation. And what happens is people go in circles.
Right.
But I just demonstrated starting with a point by starting with a point. That was my point.
Right.
Start with a point. And the reason that happens is it cues your brain and your audience to sync with your headline. So the way I often would describe it to people is like, think of yourself like a news reporter.
Right.
Imagine that your audience is not even going to listen. They're going to forget 80% of what you're going to say.
Yeah.
They might not even read the rest of the story. What is the headline that you want people to take away? Mm-hmm. So before you even get into the minutiae and the details, tell them the headline.
Right.
When you start with the headline, you are going to stay on track.
Wow. Oh, man. So it was that easy. It was that easy. I made a fool of myself on the stage when I could have just started with it. Because it's very funny when often people who, you have a preparation at home, you prepare everything good. Like, okay, I got this. Now you start going on the stage and everything, you lose everything right away. What was I going to say? And then that kind of tricks your mindset. And then the anxiety start kicking in and all that. So you're like, oh, no, I would just have to maybe just improvise something and put it there. They won't even know. They'll even find out. Let me just do that. But if it's any way to just calm that anxiety in the middle of your presentation, how do people manage to do that? Because that happened, school presentations, anyway, it could be meetings, all the stuff. So which advice would you give to people who are having that kind of moment, of a snapping moment when they get into that anxiety moment?
Yeah, one of the things I would say actually is it's the most expensive advice. And I'll tell you in a bit. Literally, one of the key ways to do that is to breathe. Try it. Because
like you said, it's like expensive. It's very expensive. People would know that I have to breathe, but they tend not to do it. And that's the most...
They don't want to keep going.
They want to keep going. And that's the most weird part, because you know you have to breathe in order to calm yourself and move on, but you still don't do it. So I guess it takes some sort of form of discipline of how you have to follow your
I
rules.
just practiced it now, actually, because I forgot what I was going to say.
Right.
So I was just like, breathe. And that gave me time to think.
Wow.
So what I'm trying to model the skills
Right.
through my conversation with you. What happens is when people forget what they want to say, the part of your brain called the amygdala kicks in. It's the part of the brain that gets afraid. And it kicks into fright mode. It's like, I'm in panic mode. I'm in danger mode. And when your mind and brain is saying that you're in danger, you forget. And
Exactly.
naturally, your nerves kick in, your hands feel sweaty, and you think everyone else out there is judging you. But what's interesting, and I often say to people, who's really judging? Is it your audience or is it you?
Yeah.
Because in reality, your audience doesn't even know what your script is.
Yeah.
You're the only one who does. And so you control the narrative, you control the script. And when you find yourself in a situation where you've forgotten your lines, you're standing there, you're going, what the heck? Everyone is staring at me. That's the time to breathe and don't stare back. Smile.
Wow.
Because what that does is it reminds your brain that you're safe.
Yeah.
Psychological safety is the key to speak with confidence. When you breathe, you persuade your audience with the power of your words.
Wow. That's a good one.
And that breathing, as I'm practicing right now, just to demonstrate what that looks like,
Yeah.
is that every word lands with power. And you're more believable, you're more credible when you express every single word like it matters. And what also happens is that your brain reminds you that you've got this. I'll share very concrete techniques to help people understand how this actually
Yes.
works. So when I talked about structures earlier, I try to use different kinds of structures. So one of the things that I would often do is I create an acronym to help me through the entire, what I call the story arc of your talk. Some people use a script. I try to work with people to create a story. Nobody forgets a good old story, even a 7-year-old. So my story arc could be something like ABC structure. So that's an ABC structure, storytelling arc. And it stands for align, build, call to action. So it says in the talk, for example, I want to start off by aligning my key message with the audience. And then through the talk, I want to talk to them about how they can build a clear storytelling structure. And by the time I'm done, at the end of this podcast, I will offer a call to action. Guess what? I don't need to remember the in-between of that. But if I have that structure in my mind, even though I lose my train of thought, I will always return to those 3 key signposts in my talk. And that's how you stay on track.
You see how simple that was?
Wow. Talking about the structures,
Yeah.
how much do you think the voice being calm itself also can help you to get through? Just being calm, because there is a thin line between you being boring or being too loud and just being calm. Because I've noticed that when you are speaking, you are very confident,
Absolutely.
but you are calm too. It could be different if you come and just start shouting and we are like, okay, what's going on here? Or it could also be different if you could just be boring, like you are afraid. Because all that comes from how the voice is presented. So I want to know if, is that also part of the structure that can help us to persuade the audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like in communication, there is what we say and then how we say it. Most people might not remember what we say, but people remember how they felt when we spoke with them.
Yeah.
And so I often say to people, whenever you're speaking, think about it as I want my message to land. And if my voice is too highly pitched, and there's a place for that, by the way, and there's a place for a voice to be a bit calmer. But the point is the voice tone has to match the narrative story arc that I was talking about earlier. So let's think about, for example, I was telling a story to, like I'm a leader and I'm sharing a story to my team about how we just made these quarters targets. And if I came in and I was like, we just made this quarters target. Even if it's true, it's very likely that the team might not believe it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have what I would call the sort of the emotional tone or energy that people need to believe it. But if I came in and said, you know what, team, we just made the squatters target, and hey, we did it. Like, it might not even be true that they made the squatters target, but because the emotional tone and voice and energy matches the message,
right,
people are likely to believe it. So I think the key really is that you have to remember that your voice is a toolbox, a sound box too, right? Yeah. And it's yours to play with. You know, for some people, they say, well, talking calmly is not natural to me. Like my voice is to be quiet or tone. But a key point I'd encourage people to focus on is be in service of your audience. What's the best variation of your tone that can really serve your audience? Because at the end of the day, if I speak, I'm just speaking. But when I communicate, people understand. That's the point of communication.
I was really locked in. Everything you were saying, I was locked in. And that's it comes very true. It comes very, very handy. Not only for guest speakers, it can go through a lot of ways. Speaking of which, if I'm mixing a song with you, Major, just remember that Precious gave me good points, good ideas to breathe. So if I'm mixing a song, you see me breathing through my session, it's because I want to remember what to tell you, not to forget everything we've been doing.
So I'm not 200 people. Come on.
No, because we've gone through stuff like this where I later on forget. I was supposed to tell him this thing. Same thing. I was supposed to tell him to put this key there, to raise my voice there. I'll go home later on. I'll send him a big paragraph. Then we have to redo this thing all over again. So if I take my time to breathe, please, you know.
I'll help you. I'll help you with something about that. Precious, this is very important. I want to know how much you believe many people missed jobs in job interviews just because of this, not having the ability to convey the message. Because the interviewer will never put you to work so you can show how you can do it. They just want to listen to you. And they judge you based on what you say. And usually when I miss jobs, I'm like, but I would just be folding cables. But I'm missing a job because I couldn't talk. Maybe you should tell me to show you how I put cables together. Maybe I'll do that in 1 minute. But again, the ability to convey a message, to tell that, because they want to see your emotional experiences, how you live with people, what are you going to help the companies? So you have to tell all these things with your mouth. But again, it's very difficult.
It is. And I have to say, I do empathize with anyone who goes through a job search process. I mean, looking for a job is a job in itself. Like, it's already very stressful. I've been through it multiple times. And just from a place of empathy, I can say that when people are often in a job interview, your mind and your thought process is, I want to get the job.
Yes.
Right? What if we flip the script and say, I don't want to get the job?
Wow. Okay. Listen,
what
man,
if?
You don't want to miss this.
What if the script is this?
Yes.
What if I'm there to interview the employer.
Oh.
Wow.
And really find out from them, how can I add value? Communication is all about being audience centric. When people go into a job interview and they're nervous because they're self-conscious. What we want is a communicator who is self-aware. And the difference between the two is self-conscious is I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm so stressed. Self-aware is how do I tailor my message to match what the employer is looking for? I often say to people that at the end of the day, the person who really has the power in the interview is not really your employer, it's you. Because you get to interview them and you get to hire them or fire them. And what does that look like if you were really there to say, you know what, with every answer I'm going to give, I'm going to focus on how this answer says that I can offer them value. It's not just about the skills. Anybody can, like 5 people can have the same set of skills, but what makes one person stand out is the person who was able to really ask follow-up questions back to the employer, has done the research, has done the homework, and potentially has had some networking already before this interview, done the pre-work, and then is present to communicate what they can add to the process or how they pass the previous experiences, makes them the right value-adding candidate for that position. So that at the end of the day, when the interviewer, the employer is thinking back at, wow, which interview did I really enjoy? They remember you. I have one goal. If I go to any interview, I have one goal. I want to have a good time. I want to leave them feeling like they got value. So even if they didn't hire me, they'll remember me because I added value.
Before you go where you want to go, how much could this affect the company later on when they discover that maybe, because there's a quote in French that says, "Les grands diseurs ne sont pas toujours des grands faiseurs." So people who talks well might not always be people who do well. So he's a very good talker. He understands the game of, bringing you into that realm of making you happy as an interviewer. Now he's hired, but he cannot deliver. And you just turn down somebody who cannot talk. But they're the best because jobs are different, right? So I want to know how can you match the talking itself and the value that we really carry to the company?
That's a great question. I think we have a phrase in Nigeria that says, empty barrels make the loudest noise. Right? So it's somewhat similar to what you're talking about.
Yes.
And it's tricky too because, sometimes with employers, it's sort of hard to figure out like who's really going to add value. And I think that's part of why some employers might do competency-based hiring where they would actually have people present a case and walk through it. So it's not just about talking about it, there's actual skills that you're demonstrating through it. One of the real reasons too why I actually do what I do in public speaking is to work with those leaders, those high performers who are quiet or who struggle to articulate their value to match what they know with how they can communicate that. Because at the end of the day, it's really about how some people are comfortable with selling themselves. I think it makes people shrink when they think about it.
Yeah.
But the point is, what good is it if you have a gift and you hold it? And what good is it if you have a gift or a skill and you can't articulate how that skill can add value? And that's one of the reasons why I exist as a public speaking coach, is to really work with those high performers, those leaders or those managers or emerging professionals who know that they've got something they can offer, but they feel stuck in their careers. They feel like they're not getting that promotion because they're not communicating their value and impact in that company. So I think that's how we can bridge the gap.
I think
Wow.
that's it. Yeah. Wow.
We got a lot. We got a lot to come. We got a lot to discuss. We'll head to a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. So we were covering about how I first ever applied for my job. I was excited. I was ready to go. The interview, I felt powerful. I'm like, I love to talk. You know, I talked to the guy in the back. I'm going for it. They say, you got it, man. Just follow your steps. I go there. I'm very, very confident. I start every question they're asking me. But some questions like, oh, I don't know how to answer that. But I just spoke based on how I felt because I thought it was the right thing. If I put my knowledge out there, they would like who I am. They would want to get me. Next day, no phone call. Next day, no phone call. So I started struggling a lot with what did I miss? The key points of what did I miss? Is it something that I did as a person, like that they didn't like, or is it just they were following their own category on what they were searching? Because I feel like I spoke the right way that I did, but everybody thinks that, right?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is there are spheres of what you can control,
Right.
and then there's spheres of a circle of what you can't control. And so there's so many things you can't control. Maybe they already had a candidate. Maybe they had different reasons. And so it's hard to know, right, 50-50 what's there. But if we look at what you can control,
Right.
the question again I would often say is, when you shared your perspective with them, did you focus on you or did you focus on them?
Well, the majority of them I was focusing on me, on how I can be. I don't know why I made this say, but the thing is, I was focusing on me because I wanted to see. My mind was, if I tell them what I'm all represent about, they will like. That's why the reason why they will hire me, because my intention wasn't, okay, they might have their points of what they're looking for, but based on the job that I applied for, I rightfully thought, I'm like, okay, I got this. This is something that I can do. This is something that I'll probably enjoy doing. So why not? Why can I say things based on me and how I feel and how I answer those questions? You know, so that's the tricky part about it. Is like,
yeah, for sure. And one thing I would just add as well that I was sharing during the break, if I may, is the real interview for most jobs happens before the actual interview. And that's where strategic networking is so important. I did a TEDx talk on how to network with confidence, because most people at any level, whether it's folks who are just starting out in their career to middle or senior executives, struggle with networking. For some people, networking is irky. It's uncomfortable. It's I don't want to be salesy, right? I don't want to be inauthentic. But the reality is, I think there's even some stats that show that over 80% of jobs are not advertised, right? So before you even show up to that interview, there's a whole interview process that has taken place without you knowing. So how do you get into the swing of the 80%, the jobs that are not advertised, right? And part of that is how you communicate your value, is whether you're focusing on, are you the right candidate for that job? And then the question I would often say to people is, if you want to interview, what problem is the employer trying to solve? Forget the fact they're trying to hire somebody. Could you ask them, what problem are you trying to solve right now? What are your 3 biggest challenges? And how quickly do you want them solved? And when you think of the person with the right skill sets, what are the 3 skill sets that they need to be able to solve that problem in the next 3 to 6 months? And then how do you measure value? What are your key KPIs? When you ask those questions, then you can then go back to the employer still in the same interview and then say, Hello, thank you very much. This is how I can address all of those problems and pain points. What you've just done is you strategically communicated and positioned yourself as a value creator. And so the employer has no choice but to go, oh, I've got candidates with the exact same skill set. But this person took the time to understand what we actually need
Right.
and then positioned themselves to be the perfect fit
Right.
for that opportunity.
And that's what I was missing. I'll gladly say that. Major, we'll go to you. I know you were boiling with them questions.
Yeah,
You've been wondering.
Yeah, mine is about political leaders. I feel like most of them have mastered these keys of public speaking, and even though they are not good at doing what they say, but they can persuade people with the words. So I want to know, for you as a coach, how would you coach the masses now, the audience, like the people, the population, to get to detect that this is really manipulative talk and this is real talk? Because you have experience in you train people to how to talk. So I want to know, how would you train the people to know that, okay, he has used the same technique but to manipulate you now? Because politicians, they do that every time.
That's a good question. So let me just check in to make sure I understand. Your question is how would I coach the masses, the people, to detect
Yes.
when a politician,
A public speaker,
a public speaker
Yes.
is manipulating them with an idea,
with the ability to speak well.
with the ability to speak well.
Yes. Because it sounds beautiful. It sounds good when you listen to somebody who talks well. But how would you know that, okay, they are using the same technique to take you different direction, but they are not that person you think they can be? Because most people who are in marriage today, maybe they came there because they were taught something beautiful. And later on, they discover that it's not what I was thinking.
Yeah, this is gonna be a bit extra spicy. If I may, one of the things that I've often reflected on, even in times where let's say I was swayed by someone's really cool idea, is it's easy to point fingers at the person who's persuading. But the real question is, what am I looking for as the audience? For example,
Very true.
if I'm looking for a speaker who's really critically thinking through what you're saying, chances are the speaker's a reflection of what's going on inside of me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if I can see the speaker as a mirror of me, then that self-awareness and leadership becomes even more important. Most people are actually very good at catching what I would call bluff detectors. They're good at detecting bluff and bias very quickly. But we're not very good at detecting bluff and bias in ourselves. So if I'm coaching the masses, I would often say, who's really in control of receiving the message? It's you. And then what are you looking for in the person who is speaking? Because if you already have a specific bias, that's what you're going to take, regardless of what you're going to say. And at the end of the day, yes, there's a part of communicating well. But what I do coach people to communicate with is to communicate with substance. It's not just about speaking well. It's about making every single word you say count. And it starts with looking inside. It starts with being aware of your blind spots and your biases in how you think, in how you feel, in how you act every day.
I think this brings me to, because I earlier on today I was having discussion with a friend about this situation that can lead them to go counseling and all that stuff. My question was, I think, was directing towards that a little bit. Do counselors, like, do they take, like, let's say if you're having going through a lot of stuff, you're having problems, you want to go see a counselor to have discuss about them, do they approach the same method as speaking to somebody who's going through a hard time, where they would want to help them in a way? Is there a specific way you would want to approach the conversation compared to if you politicians and so on? Like, what are the emotion wise, what are the things you have to take in order to go through that? Because when somebody's pouring their heart to you, you want to make sure you don't say anything that can elevate, anything more than that. So I guess, like, how do they approach that in a way?
Let me just make sure I understand.
Right. I know my questions are all over the place. I know, I get it.
That's okay. That's all right. I just want to make sure I understand. So I think what you're asking is how to sort of guide and support people,
Right,
so that we're being sensitive to their emotions. Is that
right. Like, how do you guide somebody to make them feel like, oh, they understand what I'm saying, and what every advice they give back, it kind of inflects to what I'm going through, and it makes me feel better? Is there a technique that you have to approach in order to speak to somebody who's going through a hard time, and listen to them, and have that word that you say that will comfort them, or will actually help them progress through everything they're going through?
Oh, I see. Okay. So two things. One, so in my work as an executive coach, it's a little different from counseling.
Right.
So what the difference, I mean, there are very similar techniques between counseling and coaching.
Right.
However, counseling is really more, it depends on how we look at it. Sometimes it's about looking backward to, okay, what's the problem? Let's try and solve what the problem is. In coaching, I'm not counseling people. I'm really zooming out to let people see their own strengths and think of how they can move forward.
Oh, okay.
So my job
Makes
is not
sense.
to dig into why did this thing happen. My job is to
Okay.
help them to understand their own skills and strengths and competences as a leader, so that they themselves can arrive at their own conclusion of how to move forward. So I might be, in a coaching session, for example, and the bulk of the coaching session is I do 10% talking, the client does 90%. And often, more often than not, I have to say that silence is an underrated tool in communication and speaking or coaching. Just think about those 5 seconds that just passed.
I'm taking a breath right now. Definitely
Taking a breath.
practice. Absolutely.
Silence. And silence is really the powerful tool that helps people feel like they're heard,
Yeah.
that they're seen, they're heard, and they're understood. And silence is also the same key tool that can help the people you're presenting to at that meeting.
See,
Feel
that
seen-
that
feel
I
seen,
think
heard, and
that
understood.
connected to my question when I was asking you. Silent may be the big elephant in the room, where, because most of a situation like this, I think people just rely on silence a lot, and you process everything. So I think that's the most similar thing as coaching and
Yeah.
counseling.
And I was just going to add as well, like, even as a coach, sometimes like self-coach, I walk through those processes myself. And I realize that because we live in such a fast-paced microwave world where everything is 5 minutes and we have short attention spans, what's happening is we're not really listening to ourselves. So if we're not making space to listen to ourselves, to be silent, to reflect, to pause, to breathe, then how might we make space for others to feel seen, heard, and understood when we make a presentation or we communicate with them at that interview or on stage or through the screen on Zoom?
Wow. You know, sometimes I'm like very, very, very switches to think that you're from Nigeria because not coming to my Nigeria, brother.
You are even asking my question.
Because
I'm gonna kill that.
Maybe I should give you that. I should give you the floor for that one, man.
Please.
Is this our closing question?
That's my last question.
Yes, yes.
Precious, you are really precious for sure.
Yes.
And as we started, I said I wanted to move to Nigeria. I want to be Nigerian because Nigerians are smart, everything. Now, I'm wondering, these abilities to communicate calmly and, you know, being able to express your ideas isn't affected by the place where you are born. By nature, I promise you, Nigerians, I'm sorry for my Nigerians friends. These people are loud. Not loud. Loud. When you said you came from Nigeria, I knew we were going to have a loud talk. Like, we'll be going wild. Absolutely. When you started talking, I was like, oh, this is completely different. So I'm wondering if the area and the places where we are born and where we grow up can also affect who we become in terms of how we express ourselves. Because if you coach somebody in Canada and you coach another person in Nigeria, I think your approach should be different. Because you're going to coach somebody who's dynamically here and another one who's dynamically here. So I'm wondering if the area is not really affecting who we become as public speakers. And Nigerians are loud. Not like you talk.
That's hilarious. So let me just confirm that I understand what you're asking. How does where we're from and culture shape how we communicate?
Yes. Even our voices, because if you are born in an area, in a place where everything is loud, you know, you walk up in the morning, if there's a church in your neighborhood that is already loud in 5 a.m. So you tend to communicate more loud to think that's how you're going to be understood, you know. But when you come to a place where everything is quiet, it's like I'm a sound engineer. You know, if you are in a hospital, you go to visit somebody in a hospital, you talk with a small voice. Naturally, nobody's going to ask you. You just feel like I'm too loud here. Take the same person, bring them to a market. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Or in a club.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I think I would try and balance it because, yes, some Nigerians are loud, but not all. So I'll try and balance it
You are among those ones who are not loud.
To try and balance it out. I mean, I've coached leaders, executives across different backgrounds, right? Mm-hmm. And quite often the issue is not actually about being loud. What it really is about the context of the culture you're communicating in.
Okay.
So, for example, some cultures are you have more direct communicators, right? We tell you like it is. We don't mince words. Other cultures are a bit more indirect. So instead of you saying that thing sucks, you say, oh, that's a really interesting idea. Could you tell me more? That's one culture. And I can give an example. I remember when I first got my first full-time job in Canada, I had to sort of learn to not only just give very direct feedback when it wasn't asked.
Wow.
You know, of course, it might have been the right thing to say, but the question was my colleague ready to receive that feedback? And so what I often say with communication is you've got to read the room to be effective. You could be loud and still be effective. You could be quiet and still be effective. But the key point is, what does your audience need? Is your audience looking for you to be as expressive, or is it best for your audience that you're calmer, right? And so I often actually would find that sometimes when I'm coaching a leader, perhaps in an executive, not all executives, I find in African cultures we have more protocol when we present, right? We have to go through the, let's say it was an official government speech or presentation, there is so much protocol before we even launch the presentation. You greet everyone present, and then you get into your talk. It's more those technical things that I actually work with people on. And then, of course, at the end of it, what's really important that I often say to people is just coming full circle. Why are you giving that talk?
Right.
What do you want people to take away? What is your call to action? What do you want people to do differently as a result of this presentation? So I'm going to practice it. You've listened to this podcast, I've had this conversation. You might want to go back and re-listen to different segments in this podcast and practice one action that's going to help you get 10 times better at speaking. Or you could check out my TEDx talk on how to network with confidence, because in it, you've got literally the playback on how to network. And finally, I would say find me on LinkedIn at Precious Ile and connect and find communication tips and speaking with confidence.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I guess that's what Major is trying to point out. Because you also spoke about the power of owning your voice and story. So I do feel like, it couldn't only be Nigerians, but most Nigerians that I know, of course, they do own their voice. They're powerful in their voices. So
give it up.
So I'm wondering if that could also be the method, because most Nigerians, when they're communicating, they would want to express their way by being very loud and be like, that's what I said. Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now you're talking.
So is that also one of the methods that they can be there as way to communicating? Or is it just, do you have to, in order to get your words out, do you have to obviously be calm and be, because I've seen some situation where both loud and nothing comes out. It ends up being just a fight and an argument. So it's just a way of, or it doesn't really matter. It's just if you're expressing yourself with a powerful voice, it's just a way, or is it just another way, is just to be calm and being silent and letting your words express slowly. But I think it comes down to the conversation you guys are having, whether it's high or just calm conversation.
Yeah, I think when I coach people, I don't coach people to become a version of me. I'm coaching them to become the highest version of themselves.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So it's not about everyone speaking as calmly as I am.
Yeah.
It's not about everybody having a specific tone of voice.
Yeah.
We would become clones of each other, right? And that would not be effective.
Yeah.
But what's really important, I think the key message I keep driving back here is it's two things. Know your audience.
Right.
And then know the room you're in. Know the context.
Right.
Communication varies depending on the audience who you're talking to,
Right. Yeah.
and in the context in which you're speaking in. So if those two things are not in your sandbox when you're communicating, or in the way that you're delivering your message, you risk losing your audience. You risk, saying something, thinking you've talked and you said something, but you haven't gained the buy-in to get your team on board with a new project. If you're a project manager or leader, you've spoken, but people are not sure that they can trust you, that you have the credibility to lead them forward.
Yeah.
So I think at the core of it, whether you're loud, whether you're quiet, the most important thing is be in service of your audience.
Wow.
Amazing, man. That's exactly what we were looking for on this show. And we are absolutely just blessed. I know I was very, very dived into it. And I learned a lot of key points today. Just as much as I hope you learned as much as we did out here. Obviously, finishing up with the show, we like a tradition for this show. I'm taking my breath right now, learning how to say it. Thank you so much, Precious, for teaching me this. But we would like to give you a chance to, whoever wants to reach you out, especially on this important topic of just speaking. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. So if wherever they want to reach you out. The camera's right there. You can just tell them where they want to reach you out and talk about your project a little bit and how what's coming for Precious.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I wouldn't spill all the beans here, but I'll
Right.
just focus on the key highlights.
Okay.
First of all, I love building my community. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Lovely.
You can find me at Precious Ile, Precious, literally like precious, and Ile is spelled ILE. Fun fact: Ile actually means Onye. It's shortened for Onye Ije, which means a person who is hospitable, a person who looks after guests. So
Wow.
Okay.
you can trust that in our online connections and communication that it's very hospitable. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you want to connect, you're more than welcome to reach out to me if you want to book a coach leadership communication coaching or training session for yourself or for your team. I offer coaching packages, 6 to 12 month coaching packages to really work people through the structures, the way to communicate your value. If you feel stuck in your career and you really want to level up, or at least you have a vision that you want to get people to buy into.
Yeah.
So you can totally find me online. And I think the place you definitely find me for sure is on my website, preciousile.com. I offer keynote talks and trainings titled Speak to Lead. So get out there, find me online, and let's take it to that next level of impact.
Wow.
I love it. I love it, man. So thank you so much, Precious. We just really appreciate you for coming to the show and just bless us with
My
this
pleasure.
very, very precious knowledge. It's a sensational show for sure. But thank you for coming through and chat with us for today. We appreciate you. We learned a lot. If you have any questions, you know where to reach Precious. We do. Also, I would like to, anybody, I know below, let us know who's the largest country in Africa. If you think is it Nigeria, is it Ghana, is it Congo? Who might know? Because I'm pretty loud. I can't lie to you, I'm pretty loud. But let us know down in the comment below, man. And if you love this podcast, keep up with a sharing and subscription, and tell a friend subscribe. So we appreciate you for tuning in. On my right side, you know what I'm saying? I know the man in the back is waiting for this moment. On my right side, we got Major Mugisho. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
man.
Right there. I'm your host, Baraka, sensational. And of course, on my left side, we have the wonderful Precious. Thank you so much for coming today and chat with us. We appreciate you. Can't wait to have you back here. A lot of people are going to have questions for you, so stay tuned. But thank you for tuning in. This has been Afro Diaspora
you.
Podcast. We are signing out. Peace.
My pleasure.